Good evening, everybody. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast on a Monday evening. Must be time for your Calamity Jane live stream. James, it has been raining here for a solid 24 hours, and I could not be happier.
Yeah, so just washing the streets and making everything nice and clean.
Oh, I love it. I just, me, and it's that nice needle cold rain that I
Hmm.
was so familiar with up in Seattle.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just, yeah, it's just like, I'm gonna be so sad when it finally moves on tomorrow and that horrible oppressive sunlight comes back.
Your vampire ways are now going to be, you're going to have to resort to hiding in the shadows again,
Again,
or you
once
just
I will
can't.
have to retreat back into the shadows once again.
Yeah, sorry, man.
No, it's
Here in
fine.
LA,
I've been enjoying it as much as I can. And
that's
for the
good.
record, just for a hand check, the reason my hands are moving below the camera is because
Oh,
I've
there we
got the
go.
little miss in my
Star of the
lap right
show.
now. Yeah, that's right. So that's
Star of
yeah.
the
Oh,
show.
thank you. Okay, so that's what my hands are busy over time doing. So is petting her and making sure that she is kept in the comfort that she has become accustomed to. But
Yes,
what were
of
you saying
course.
about Los Angeles?
Los Angeles, we've had a little bit of rain too, so this is nice. It's always nice when we get rain in LA because it's
Yeah,
almost like a mythical thing because it rarely happens
I remember.
anymore. It feels like.
God, this was years ago now. At this point, I mean, almost maybe almost a decade at this point. But that there was that monsoon level rain, and I remember seeing footage of the Glendale Galleria parking deck, and just water cascading off the top of the stairs
Yeah,
a true waterfall.
yeah,
It was unbelievable. I always remembered because LA is not really set up to move water off the streets,
no,
and so
mm-mm,
everything floods everywhere, and there's just like
yeah,
puddles of water. I was always afraid driving into my apartment complex when I lived down there that we were because there was always this one. Anytime it rained, there was this massive
hmm,
flooding area. I was always afraid there was water going to get in the engine and stall it because we had it was the only way to get in, and you had to drive through it, and they never fixed
yeah,
it. We never
yeah,
stalled it, but phew.
yeah. I mean, here where we live, like sea level, like I think we're like maybe 20 to 50 feet above sea level, if
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
So if yeah, any rain here, it's a flood of
yeah,
sorts. But
yeah.
yeah, and also on top of that, then uh I mean, my fellow Los Angelinos, I feel bad saying this, but when you throw rain on the streets here, it's chaos.
Oh,
People don't know how to drive in rain for some reason. I don't understand why, but and then on top of that, there's all this oil buildup on the streets
oh yeah,
anyway, on
yeah. Makes
freeways.
everything super
So
slick.
it's
Yeah,
just yeah, it's nightmarish, you know. So I welcome rain. I miss all the seasons in Utah, and rain was fun. But in LA, it's a little bit more of a crapshoot. It feels so sketchy and kind of rolling the
mm,
dice a little bit because you just don't know if somebody ahead of you knows how to drive in rain or snow, or they're just from Southern California and they have no idea what rain even is.
So
So,
in all fairness, it's only sunny about 3 months out of the year up in Seattle, and then it's
hmm,
overcast and misty. Come
hmm,
late September, early October, when the rains typically come back, it's like people have forgotten how to drive in the 3 months that there wasn't rain. And it's just like,
really?
yeah, for that first week or two, when the rain really comes back, there's accidents everywhere on the
Yeah,
roads.
that's true. Yeah, I think Utah. I remember that too, especially after the first blanket of snow. There's always a bunch of accidents you see, and everybody gets acclimated to it. And then, yeah, that's true. You're right.
Yeah,
I think there's this weird thing where we kind of just fall back into whatever our habits were established.
yeah.
Whatever our comfortable months were
Meanwhile,
this
in
summer.
Georgia, they're just terrible drivers year round. Doesn't matter what the weather is.
Are you saying that is Georgia have in the states you lived in? Are you saying Georgia is the worst?
Oh yeah, far and away. And the states that I have lived and driven in, so like LA is fast, but I've found that people are really good drivers in
Yeah,
LA.
yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that too.
And so the biggest challenge of driving in LA is if you can be as aggressive as everybody else, then you'll be fine. But if you're
Hmm.
one of these sort of like passive, oh, go ahead and go in front of me kind of drivers, you're going to have a really bad
Yeah,
time.
you're never gonna. Yeah, yeah.
So
You
in
have to go
LA,
with the flow of the nature of
exactly. So if you can get with the sort of the culture of driving in LA is great, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of stop and go, but um, I never got into an accident in LA despite all the traffic, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Seattle is slow. Everybody drives extremely slow, and everybody's unbelievably polite. And that actually causes a problem because everybody's trying to out polite each other, and so they don't, they have trouble merging, and they're too
Uh,
passive at stop signs. I mean, it's sort of that classic, thing in the cliche of a four-way stop, and everybody keeps waving each other to go
mhm.
first,
Mhm.
and then they all go at the
Yeah.
same time and get into an accident. I mean, that
Yeah.
whoever came
Yeah.
up with that cliche clearly drove in Seattle, but the so they were bad, um, and but coming from LA, if you bring that aggressiveness to Seattle, you're basically king of the road, right? Like,
Jeez, that's weird.
because you get to a four-way stop and you're like, I'm gonna go, and you go, and everybody's like, oh, thank God, someone made a decision, right? you know,
That's hilarious.
um,
Wow.
and so yeah, and everybody, so you get to places faster because you're willing to change lanes, right?
Mhm.
You only get into a problem when two people are driving next to each other doing 10 under the speed limit, which is really common in Seattle. People love to drive 10 under the speed limit up there.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah.
But
Wow.
in
I mean, one of these days,
yeah,
I'll have to see what it's like driving
oh
in Seattle. I mean, I'd love to go and visit one of these days,
yeah,
but.
yeah. I think I'm gonna probably make a trip in 2023.
Mhm.
It's in the early stages of planning, but I'm thinking about it. The theater that I used to be at up there, they're doing their 40th anniversary next year, so I wanna make sure I get up there. But yeah, but Georgia is the worst of LA and Seattle combined. You'll either have people who are driving unbelievably slow or people who are driving unbelievably fast. And neither set of people know how to drive. Um,
Oh, that's a really bad combo.
it's a really
Jeez.
bad combo, especially given that Atlanta has a really, really bad street racing problem. Um,
Oh, okay.
there's multiple times. I mean, this year alone, I've almost gotten in 5 accidents just because I was driving on the interstate and these souped up sports cars are racing and weaving between traffic on the interstate. And they come up and they like zoom around you, like
Yeah,
missing you by a
yeah.
hair's breadth. And um, then you get off the road, and then you've been driving, and I'm not a slow driver. I drive 80, on the
Mhm.
interstate,
Mhm.
and these people are zooming past me at 110 miles an hour. And then I'll get
Jeez.
off the road, and then you have to reset your brain for the slower traffic on surface streets. But it's just like I'm going from 80 miles an hour to someone driving 10 below the 45 speed limit, and you're like, oh my god. And also like change lanes without looking who's behind them. So
Oh, jeez.
Atlanta is, of the
Wow.
3 places that I have driven extensively, the worst, the absolute worst. So,
Wow.
but so what are we looking at today? I assume we're not going to
Uh,
be working
yeah, we can't
on
talk about
traffic
traffic. Yeah,
patterns. Yeah.
that's exciting times for half an hour talking about just traffic patterns. Hang on here. Let me share my screen. Oh, host disable participant screen sharing.
Oh no, I forgot. Oh wow, wow. That's been a while. It's been a
No, that's
while
what
since I've
happened.
forgotten.
Yeah, it has. It has been a while.
All right, you're ready to
Uh,
go now. You're ready to go now.
yeah, cool. Um, yeah, when talking traffic, I mean, you're focused all on that. So of course, disabling street screen sharing is not one of your
No,
priorities.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So
I think for tonight, I'm just gonna work on this pose here.
okay.
Just try to get as far as I can. I mean, I'm already started on it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna try to finish it off. And I know there's a lot of hodgy podgy kind of stuff going on here. Size isn't right or anything, but I'll get the pose right. And I'll finish the drawing, and then we'll see where we get by the end of
Sounds
our
good.
half hour.
Sounds good.
Um,
Yeah, the thing is I live just outside of the perimeter, or as anybody in the know calls it, OTP, which is frowned upon. Only the losers live outside the perimeter.
Okay,
The
wait,
cool
the perimeter
kids,
of.
so Atlanta is circled by a very weird interstate called I-285. It's not an interstate
Okay.
because it's a closed loop around Atlanta, and
Hmm.
it's I-285. It doesn't go anywhere. You would just, if you've ever seen like those Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoons where the guy gets trapped on the interstate and can't ever get off the interstate,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
it's like that. I mean, if you just stayed on 285, you'd never leave. Um,
Okay.
um, um, and it's one of these weird things where as you're driving, you'll be going east on 285, and then eventually you're going to be going south 285, and you're like, wait, when did east 285 become south 285? And if you don't know where you are in the city and you're not familiar with the region, like people get lost on 285 all the time. And it
Hmm.
happens less now because of phones and stuff. But, before GPS, people would go like, wait, I thought I was supposed to go east on 285 and it's telling me to go south on 285? I don't understand,
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, because it circles the city, um, basically anything outside of 285 is considered outside the perimeter, right? And that's where the losers live. That's when the uncool kids live. Um,
Okay.
but if you live ITP inside the perimeter, that's where all the cool kids live. So I have lived outside the perimeter for as long as I've ever lived in Georgia. Um,
Okay.
And who knows? I might try to move inside the perimeter when my lease ends. I've decided I'm not gonna stay in this apartment at the end of my lease next year. I
Uh-huh.
might not even stay in Georgia. I haven't made up my mind. I basically like gave myself a year
Yeah.
to go. Okay, I'm gonna like finally decide that I'm gonna stick it out in Atlanta for the time being, or I'm gonna throw a dart at a board and try to go somewhere else.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know how to do that since the pandemic. I mean, maybe stay in the States, but I'd like to live somewhere else, like live outside of the United States, right?
Okay.
But since the
That's your ideal
pandemic,
scenario?
yeah, it's just, it's impossible to. I mean, like I was like, New Zealand's like, oh, that's a cool place, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Hmm.
just putting penny down. Then you get on their immigration website, and it basically tells you that unless you're under 35 and or have a job that's based in New Zealand, don't waste your time.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Um, Everything has gotten a lot harder because of the pandemic. And
So that's a relatively new
I don't.
suggestive law before.
It's
I mean,
gotten it's gotten
from.
a lot more stringent. It's always
Okay.
been challenging. Most countries don't want you moving there. They don't like, most countries I have found don't like immigrants.
Hmm.
The United States is not unique in that regard. For
Hmm.
instance, Canada makes it almost impossible to move
Yeah. Yeah.
there. They work on a points system, right? And you
Yeah.
have to
Like
have a certain, like, you get so many points for being this age, you get so many points for having this education, you get so many points for this and that and this. And if you cross the points threshold, then cool, welcome. We want to have you, right?
hmm
But the points limit is so high, that it's really hard. Basically what you have to have to get enough points is you have to have a high paying job with a
hmm
particular type of 4-year degree. You have to be under the age of 40, um, which is a bizarre thing, but it's not even the only place that does that, right? Like it's like
hmm
35 is the cutoff, and the one thing that basically is a short circuit is if you have a job there, right? Then okay,
hmm
well, if you have a job here, then come on in. Whereas the
Yeah.
United States is far more draconian in that regard.
hmm
But that's pretty much everywhere. New Zealand is the same thing. It works on a point system as well, and I do not meet any of the points qualifications. So I'm gonna look into it. I mean, I'd love to. Places that I'd really like is like Northern Europe, so Iceland, Ireland,
hmm
Scotland, one of the Scandinavian countries. Although
Sure.
the Scandinavian countries are notoriously hard to get into. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, so I don't know. Just idle thoughts right now.
Well, in the U.S., I think we've talked about it before a little bit, just offline. But you're talking about maybe even like a potential destination would be like Colorado, for example.
Yeah, I looked into
Right?
Colorado. It is unbelievably expensive. Um,
Yeah.
oh yeah, crazy, crazy
Huh.
expensive. Particularly Denver. Denver is just it's the average rent for a one bedroom in Denver is $1,800 a month.
That's like here.
Yeah,
That's like in
it's
LA.
yeah,
I
it's
mean, you could
insanity.
spend another $200, you could be like, well, $100, and you could be in LA, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for that price. You have to deal with snow or anything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Um,
do you think that's because of the pandemic too? Because everything just went crazy as far as
yep,
housing. Anything housing related just went insane.
yep.
You know.
That's a huge part of it, right? I mean, just because I've been, dealing with life. I mean, just like everybody has. Um, it's yeah, it's to me there can be no ambiguity. A lot of this stuff is a sort of a long term consequence of the decisions that were made in the pandemic, good or bad. We made decisions that had these very long term consequences, and it's made moving harder just in general.
Yeah.
It's
I wonder if it's
rent is
gonna. I
higher,
wonder if it's
and
gonna taper off. Yeah. Do you think that?
eventually,
I wonder if it's gonna taper off. Um, and things will settle down. I mean, now that once people stop moving, I don't know. I don't know.
I
Who
don't.
knows?
I
But
mean, I
yeah,
honestly don't know, man. Yeah, things will taper off. Because they always do.
yeah, they always do. Yeah.
Um, but I mean, between the supply chain issues, and resource issues, and the inflation issues, and there's just a lot of things that are putting a lot of weight on the economy right now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's they raised my rent in my apartment like $150 a month this last time.
Mm-hmm.
When I lived here originally, I was paying about $1,000 a month. Now I'm paying
Mm-hmm.
$1,300 a month.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and I did the math, and it was cheaper to sign the lease, even with the rent increase. It was cheaper to sign the lease than the all the upfront costs of moving, right? So you've got to hire the moving company because I don't really have anybody here anymore that would help me move. So I'd have to have a moving company help me.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the security deposit. Every apartment complex wants you to pay 2 months rent up front now, and then there's the pet deposit, and there's the blah 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 blah, and the blah blah blah. There's so much upfront cost that even if I got a
Yeah.
better deal on an apartment, it still would be more expensive to move than to just soak up the rent
Mm-hmm.
increase, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's why I went ahead and signed the lease one more time. Um, but yeah, I mean, if they raise my rent again next year, I won't be able to afford to live here, and so I'll have to find a way to cover the upfront cost of moving. But that's a
Mm-hmm.
problem for future Eric to deal with.
Yeah. And for a future episode as well for our streaming.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's the other thing too, right? Like the IRS completely bottomed me out. I mean, I'm almost completely out of money because of how much in taxes I owed. And
Mm-hmm.
I just finished paying it off, but I started this year off with $22,000 in my checking account. I
Mm-hmm.
have $5,000 in my checking account now.
Yeah. Wiped out, huh?
Yeah, just the IRS wiped me out completely. Yeah. So
Hopefully this next year then things can settle down and you can kind of build up a little bit more of a cushion and then be
that's the
out the
goal,
shock.
right? That's the goal. I've been at this company that I'm working at for a year, so I'm gonna push for a raise when my year anniversary comes up, and that's coming up in like a month and a half, or I think closer to 2 months, but getting close. Um, and I finally paid off the IRS, and so that $1,000 a month finally goes away. So yeah, my goal is just to try to refill the coffers a little bit. I've plugged up most of the leaky holes right now.
Hmm.
So my big thing will be paying off because I had to take on a huge amount of credit card debt just to afford paying off the IRS.
Yeah.
So, so I got to pay off that credit card debt too. So that'll be like one of the next big ones. But hopefully, by the end of it, I'll be back on an even keel again, and then
Hmm.
can make some headway again.
Yeah. It's funny. Like we've been talking a lot about living, even before our stream, and it kind of So we're talking about
Yeah.
this, and also, I don't know. I mean, kind of more of a not as much of a glum note, but more of a it's more of a nice little innovation that you came across. I'm actually fascinated by this whole sandwich kit that you did.
Oh yeah, the
I'm still
sandwich
thinking
kit.
about the
Yes.
sandwich kit is pretty cool.
Yes.
I wanted to chime in, and I want to throw in like how one thing that I like to do, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
whether this is something you'd be down for, but lately for me, I've been going to the store like during I meet the works at the office a lot, so then I'm usually home alone. I figure out stuff for lunch. So my thing I do is I get like those little salad bags, those ones that are pre-packed.
Mm-hmm.
They have like all the greens in it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you take a bunch of and you take some of that meat, whatever that you're talking about, throw it in with a salad and a couple of croutons, and you got a dressing, and you got a salad for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Another
Mm-hmm.
strategy that I like to avoid that usually gives me about 3 lunches a week or so, roughly. I don't know, just a side note as a strategy. But this all stems from I'm going way ahead of
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Is Eric? You were talking about a sandwich kit, and I was just thinking about other ideas for your sandwich kit.
Oh no, it's yeah. So at my Kroger, my local Kroger, and I don't know if they do this at every Kroger or what. I've only seen it at this one, but then again, I haven't done any research. They do these kits basically where you can buy like the Italian kit, and it comes with salami, pepperoni, and provolone. You can do the American Classic kit, which is turkey and ham and American cheese. You can do the ham and cheese kit, and basically they cut a predetermined amount of meat, right, and they bundle it together in a single package, and then it makes like 5 sandwiches. All you got to do is buy the breads, the condiments, and whatever add-ons you want, and you've got your sandwich, and it's great. It's like it's perfect because I'm alone all the time. I don't like buy perishable stuff for the most part because I don't eat it fast enough, and it just ends up being food waste,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, uh-huh.
I mean, like my refrigerator is depressing. It's completely empty. The fridge is completely empty, and the freezer is always filled to capacity, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, no, it's great. And we were talking, and I'm like, I want them to like take it to the next level where they do individually wrapped sandwich fixings, right? So they'll do like sliced tomatoes, onions, and lettuce, and they'll put them each in sealed packages, right? So they won't go
Hmm.
bad as quickly. So you can like
Yeah, yeah.
buy this like a 5 pack of these fixins, and then you can like over the course of the week you have enough fixins for 5 sandwiches, right? And that would be great. I would love that. Like I just someone should invent that. It's not going to be me because I'm too lazy. Um, and like make that a reality because I, again, as a longtime single person, would just eat that up with with my hands, I guess, because it's a sandwich. But I would just eat that right up.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds. I think you got. I think. Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether you're gonna wait for that to be invented or not, but at least you have some groundwork to kind of run with.
You know what I should do? Honestly, I'm saying this. I don't need to wait for Kroger to do it. I should buy one of those vacuum sealer bags things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then like just buy a head of lettuce, buy a tomato, pre-slice it, and then vacuum seal all of it, and then do it that way, right?
Yeah.
I should
There you
do
go.
that. Yeah, yeah, that'll work. I don't know why I'm making such a big thing of it. I'm just
Well.
really lazy, I guess, and I would just prefer someone to do all of the work for me, and then I will pay a slight premium so I don't have to do any work. I think that's what it really boils down to is I'm unbelievably lazy.
Well. I mean, I think we as humans always want to do things, with the as least amount of effort as possible, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't fault you for that. If there was a way just to live just by reclining and just eating grapes all day or whatever,
Oh,
I would totally do
I
that,
mean,
and have.
look,
Yeah.
I desperately want to be Hedonism Bot from Futurama. I just that would Hedonism Bot is the character I would be. I would strive to be in Futurama. Jumbie, bring me the chocolate sauce.
I've not I'm not familiar with this bot. I didn't watch that. I didn't get that many seasons into Futurama to know that character.
Hedonism Bot
But
is like he's all gold. He looks like a Roman emperor, but only the top half of a Roman emperor, because his bottom half is one of those lounging couches that you always see Romans lounging in those, in classic
wow.
frescoes and stuff. And his
Uh-huh.
legs are literally the legs of the couch. So he walks around on the legs of the couch that he's physically built into, and his
Oh my
only purpose is
gosh,
to revel in hedonism.
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
pretty great. Yeah.
Eventually, one of these days, I'll have to revisit Futurama and actually watch the rest of the seasons. I know I'm missing out on that show. Some
Especially
really
with
good
the
stuff
revival
there.
coming up. I mean, I don't. I'm when they do these revivals, it tends to be more miss than hit. Every once in a while, you'll get a hit, but like season 3 of Twin Peaks was an absolute hit for me. But um, you know, everybody's coming back for the new season of Futurama. Although for a
Huh.
while it was dubious that John DiMaggio was going to come back, but he did. So, um,
Okay. So
and
it's kind of like worth it to try to get kind of caught up again, or reacquaint yourself with the universe of Futurama. In other
yeah,
words,
yeah,
is what
I
you're saying.
just did another rewatch of Futurama earlier this year, so I don't need to do another one. Um,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, I've gone through the whole series, and it's like 6 or 7 seasons of varying lengths. Um,
Hmm.
and I highly recommend it. I mean, it's like one of those shows you kind of have to watch just to understand popular culture to a certain extent,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
people reference it all the time, right? "Shut up and take my money" is like one of the classic memes, and that's straight out of Futurama. Um, and and what's my dog doing? Oh, she's just being very weird. And there's so many jokes and gags that you will like all of a sudden understand just by virtue of the fact that you watched Futurama.
Hmm. I didn't know Futurama was that kind of tapped into I don't know, the zeitgeist of
In
pop
particularly
culture at
geeky
this
and
point.
nerdy circles, right? Like I don't think something as pedestrian as like Big Bang Theory is going to reference, for all of its claims to geek cred or nerd cred. It's not a
Ah,
smart enough show to really be referential in that way. But like, I
mm-hmm.
mean, I'd have to watch it. I am almost certain Rick and Morty have referenced Futurama on multiple occasions. Um, and it's obviously more. Uh, it's not as mainstream as say The Simpsons or
Hmm.
even Rick and Morty for that matter. But in its heyday, I mean, it was great, and it
Yeah.
still has some cultural cliche, maybe a little diminished, but it still definitely has some cultural cachet, not cliche,
Hmm.
cachet.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Close enough. It rhymes.
yeah, right, yeah,
Um, yeah, it's funny that you're talking about the other show, uh, Big Bang Theory,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
that's a whole other. Yeah, we're kind of running out of time, but we'll bring it up for next week. But Big Bang Theory, what? Yeah, that was my gripe with that show because there's a new show on. I don't know if you've seen it yet or not, called Mythic Quest or Mystic Quest.
Yeah, Mythic
It's on
Quest. It's
Hulu.
yeah, it's on Apple TV, and
Yeah,
it's set in the games industry, in a
yeah. I
dev
was curious. Have you
studio.
seen an episode yet?
I haven't for two
Have you seen it
reasons.
yet?
One, it's either going to be so ridiculously inaccurate and unrepresentative of how video games are made that it's just going to be irritating to me to watch. Or two, it's going to
Uh-huh.
be unbelievably accurate and it's just going to be triggering and traumatic for me to watch.
Yeah, yeah. You can't win.
Either way, it's not a
Well,
show I want to watch.
yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the your first guess is the right one. Because I watched an episode, I couldn't like we were watching it. I just couldn't. I did not like it. I just felt like this felt like how the show Big Bang Theory was the same thing. Like this is how nerds and geeks are.
Right,
We're observing it. We're gonna do our version of it, but like
right.
it's not really authentic. this is the same thing. It's not authentic at all. Uh, yeah, I mean, again, like I don't have the like my background in games isn't exactly like yours, but I know enough about like I had did work at Activision for a while, and doing QA of all things, and working in games and knowing how the sausage is made for the most part in a
Hmm.
in an abstract way with different games. It's not accurate. It's really annoying.
Right, right, and that's kind of what I
Especially the
assumed.
QA section.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, the QA part was kind of like, man, they really have it that good.
Yeah, no, yeah.
They don't.
If they're depicting the QA section of having it good, then they've clearly never stepped foot inside of a video game studio.
Yeah, yeah. But there are some funny jokes too that are in there that
Hmm.
I don't know if it's common knowledge or not, but like there was like a clip with QA like, oh, you want your ideas to be heard because blah 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 blah, like implying that they're QA and you can't really say anything, like there's that kind of stuff that's kind of funny, but
Hmm.
there's a few moments there, but in the general sense, to me, it's an offshoot of like it's kind of like a new modernized version of Big Bang Theory, and
Hmm. It's a
it's
shame
not.
too because it doesn't it have Rob McElhenney in it, right? From
Yeah, yeah,
It's Always Sunny,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The cast is good. He's the main he's the main creator guy.
Hmm.
The actors are fine. It's really the writing and the core the core universe that they're making. It's just it doesn't seem to be. Yeah, there's just moments in there in the show. In the very first episode, I'm not interested in watching after this, but yeah, there's just moments in the show where it just feels like, yeah, this is not how it works at all. Like, and Danny Pudi's in it.
Oh, Danny Pudi's in it. Oh, that's a shame. I
Yeah,
love Danny Pudi.
yeah, yeah. And so I did want to give it a shot, but yeah, so far it feels very Big Bang Theory-ish to
Mm.
me.
Yeah,
Sadly.
and this is minor because I never was able to sell it or get anybody's interest in it. But I wrote a pilot and an entire series
Yeah.
bible for a similar show set in a game studio.
Hmm.
The people in this, it's probably because it's just too inside baseball.
Yeah.
The people who have read it who worked in the games industry thought it was hilarious, right? But
Yeah.
then you show it to
And
people, and and I worked really hard to dumb it down and make it more
mhm,
palatable and accessible. And it's just, I think people just have a real hard time believing that the video game functions the way it functions, right?
mhm, yeah.
Because everything that I wrote in the pilot has been exaggerated slightly, but is largely something that I or someone I know has experienced, right? And
Hmm.
or had experienced. I don't imagine the games industry has changed that much in the 5 years since I left it, but who knows? Um, but people read it and they go, "This doesn't. Is this really what happens at a game studio?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is basically what it is. It's
I
like,
mean, yeah, you have like actual, you lived some of it,
yeah. I
so
mean, yeah. Um, but yeah, it's just interesting. Um, it people. I've had a few people read it who weren't in the games industry and liked it, and some of the jokes went over their head. But
yeah,
I guess the thing
yeah,
is
that's
I
the
just
challenge because
yeah, it's just finding that balance, and I think that that's the problem
yep,
with Mythic Quest or whatever. Is that their aim was more about just making a palatable sitcom than making
yep,
something
mhm,
that was actually represents the insanity of the games industry.
yeah, yeah, and that's pretty much where it's at. So I wonder how popular it's going to end up being because maybe it will appeal to mass
Well,
people,
season
masses,
three
and
just premiered, so I mean,
yeah,
it clearly has some kind of legs.
mhm.
But yeah, it's it. Yeah, I'd still love to make that show. I just don't think it's at this point. It's. I'd have to go back and work on the pilot a little bit and make it a little bit more contemporary. And honestly, I've been out of the industry so long. I don't even know how relevant any of my stories are anymore. But
Oh, they're always going to be relevant because that's experience and that's something that you can't really replace or replicate. That's all. If you source it from that, I don't think you can go wrong.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think you do. I mean, the challenges you're talking about are real. I mean, it is very abstract talking about you know a type of code due to with engineers to do a certain thing, and then trying to make that palatable for a broad audience is really
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Mm-hmm.
challenge.
Yeah, I mean,
At
I
the
remember
same time,
watching like Mr. Robot and watching them try to thread that needle, and
mhm,
sometimes they did it. Sometimes it was like, okay, that wasn't wholly inaccurate, but that
yeah,
you know, but
mhm,
I understand why you simplified it the way that you did, so an audience would
yeah,
understand
yeah,
it. And then
yeah.
sometimes I'm like, no, you're just making that up.
Yeah, but I got so caught up in Mr. Robot because yeah, I was with you on that too because they got really detailed with enough stuff that I was willing to forgive the leaps of faith for what they
Yeah.
had their stuff going, had happening. No one could type that fast in some scenarios. Typing that much code to
Oh, I know. It's so I love it. I
turn the
love it
lights
when
off or
hackers are hacking each other in real time. And I'm like, do you
oh
not understand how code works? Like, this is ridiculous. That's not how programming works. I mean,
no. Yeah,
anyway,
and everything works flawlessly in the very beginning too.
I know. It's
Enter.
just like
Oh, it works.
I
Oh, it never
know.
breaks. They know there's perfect score every time.
It's
Come
just
on.
it's so you just sit
They
there.
forgot they didn't have a semicolon. They had a semicolon in the right spot every single time.
I
Really?
know. I know. It's so stupid. I'm watching this show on Amazon Prime called The Peripheral, which is inspired by a William Gibson novel, and we've talked about it a little bit, and it's fun. I like it. It's not a classic. It's not amazing television, but it's enjoyable, and it's very it's like all of William Gibson crammed into one show. So it's got cybernetics, it's got
Mhm.
neural networks, it's got time travel, it's got AI, it's got VR, it's got I mean it's just evil
Mhm.
corporations. I mean it has everything and then some. It's even got the William Gibson's kitchen sink in it, I suspect, right? Um, so it's kind of a mess narratively, but it's a fun show. But there's this one scene, and I'm not going to explain it, but they do the real time hacking thing where like two hackers are
Oh, jeez.
competing against each other, and you just sit there and you go, guys, have we just not
Really?
learned? Like we just, and it's I guess I have a degree in computer science, so I know. I mean, I don't program anymore, and I couldn't even if you asked me to.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
know how programming works. I know how
Yeah.
laborious it is and how
Yeah.
there's so much trial and error, and you'll write 3 lines of code, hit compile, and your computer blows up, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Because you
Hmm.
allocated memory accidentally to some forbidden memory space, blah 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 blah.
Yep.
And so the idea that these people are typing at 3,000 words a minute and like dynamically compiling. I mean, even if
Yeah.
because the show does take place in the near future, so let's say that they've invented a real-time compiler that is just constantly generating
Yeah.
executables in real time after every time you write a line of code, and and so you could conceivably program in real time, right? Okay, cool. I'm willing to
Hmm.
go with you there. What I'm not willing to go with is exactly what you were saying, them always typing perfect code every time. Like it doesn't no one
Yeah.
can do that. I remember I worked on a
Yeah.
video game once where the physics engine there was a global environment object, right?
Hmm.
That you would it basically was a class that set all the world parameters. So you could set the gravity, you could set
Hmm.
that's where you modified all the world parameters. Well, the guy who wrote the system initially misspelled environment. And
Oh
so
man.
when I started working on it, I couldn't find the environment object because he wrote environment or something along those lines. And so I had to
Yeah.
go through and do like you do a find and replace because you can't go through line by line, but the
Yeah.
find and replace it still isn't going to hit anything, right? And so just the
Yep.
act of correcting a spelling error in his system took me 3 days of debugging to change. And you expect me to
Oh man.
believe that even if we go with this real-time executable generator, right? That people are typing perfect code? No, I'm sorry. That's just
Yeah.
not. It's not
It's not.
believable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway,
with all that said, I love Mr. Robot. I think it was a great show. I really
yeah,
enjoyed that.
yeah, yeah.
In general, but I think we're getting close to quitting time for
Yeah, we've been going for a
tonight. I
good 40
think.
minutes here.
Yeah. So yeah, I got that pose out out of the way, so it's here now.
Cool. Yeah, it looks great. Are you gonna
And
keep
then
Mitchell that far to the left of frame?
Oh no, no, no! I was only doing that just to see the
Oh, just have
sketch
the
that I
reference.
prepared.
Okay,
Yeah, but
okay.
I will. Yeah, I'll. Yeah, but that that's the beauty of Flash is that or animate is you could just
Uh,
bring things over or
hey, look at
substitute
that. That's
and
amazing. That's amazing.
so yeah. But for now, I'll just do that just to reference
Yeah.
it, just when I want to clean it up later. But yeah. And then I was getting ready to finish off the rest where he slams it down. So we got the
Mm-hmm.
mid pose, and then this final pose will be up next.
Cool.
So yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Lots of progress happening. Well, cool. I guess we'll wrap it up there then. As always, I'm going to do my usual spiel. Head over to calamityjane.rocks. That'll take you to our Patreon site and consider becoming a subscriber, helping us make this cartoon a reality. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. Or not, I'm sorry, not Instagram. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. On Twitter at Jane Salamander. We do 3-tweet stories every week. There's a pretty silly one coming up here this week about a concert that Calamity Jane tries to go to. And so that should be pretty fun. As always, if you read those tweets, you read those stories, you're going to be going, what does all of this mean? Because you're not going to have any context for it. But then when we do finally get around to telling some of these stories, you're going to realize that we have spent far too much time thinking about this cartoon and living in this world. But otherwise, yeah, we do this live, by the way. So most people seem to watch this after the fact. But if you're ever free at the time that we're live streaming it, I do pay attention to the chat. So consider hopping into the room and chatting with us and having a good time. We love fielding questions and interacting with people who join us. And it does happen from time to time, believe it or not. In any case, I think that's about it for the evening. I think I've done my usual spiel, so I'll leave it at that and say thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there, everybody, and have a good night. Good night.
Night.